Hello everyone, this is Othman Al-Traih once again in another recording on visual information where we are going to practice what we have learned in our previous lecture on using charts and visual information. Okay, uh, to start with, let's just try to refresh your memories by recapping what we have learned in the previous lecture on using charts in visual information. Okay, uh, if you remember, in our previous lecture, we have mentioned uh, several points concerning using visual information, and we concentrated on charts generally, and we said that uh, there are few points that we need to consider as far as charts are concerned. We said that we have seen some examples of several types of visual information, and these were mainly line graphs, where we said that we can use them to describe change. I mean, when there is a set of two variables and we want to correlate them together and describe the change that happens. And also said we can use for example, diagrams to illustrate parts and functions or steps. And we also talk about using tables and pie charts, and when we need to make comparisons between different set of information or data, and so on. That was the first part. We have also seen how to use some function words in the language used to describe charts. I mean, uh, we concentrate on adjectives, adverbs, and verbs that can be used to describe different trends in charts, whether it is upward trend or downward trend, or whether it stays stable, and so on. So in this recording, we are going to practice what we have discussed earlier by concentrating on graph description. We're going to have a sample of real graph description, as you can see it here on the screen here. And also we're going to take some examples where we can do some kind of analysis for graphic information or information given in graphs. And finally, we're going to practice also some kind of, we'll try to identify texts that describe certain graphs, or graphs that represent certain data or information, when we see how we can interpret them through text given. So this is what we're going to do in this recording today. So to start with, let's have a look at the first part here. You see, first of all, here we have a graph, and let's start by the instructions given here. The instructions here starts by saying study the graph below and complete the description with the most appropriate expression. So it is made, the question is made up of two parts. Studying the graph, that means we need to concentrate on the information in the graph itself. Then after that, we have to complete the description given here. And of course, doing this task is based on what we have learned in the previous part. This is the practice stage, which we're going to have it together in order to apply what we have learned earlier there. So in order to study the graph, we need to have a look at it. And of course, when you have a graph like this, you need to look at every single aspect in that graph, starting from the title itself. And as you can see here, the title says here, share of mothers with infants by educational attainment and the period between 1960 to 2011. So this is the title of this uh, chart here. Now, in the chart itself, there are two line graphs, as you can see here. One is dark black here, and as you can see at the end here, this one shows uh, the share of mothers uh, who have high school diplomas or less. I mean, it starts by giving us their educational background. I mean, those mothers who have high school diploma or less than that. And the gray line graph here tell us about uh, the share of mothers who have a college degree or more. I mean, whether it's a master's degree or a PhD degree or whatever. So this is as far as the two graphs are concerned here, because uh, since there is no legend, you need to understand why there are two graphs here. So this is the first step. The second thing is, as I have told you, when you find a graph, you have to understand that usually there is some kind of relationship between the values given in the x-axis and in the y-axis. And it's very important to understand this kind of relationship here. So in the x-axis, as you can see here, it tells us about the time duration. I mean, we are describing the events in the period between 1960 to 1970, 1980 until 2011. This is in the x-axis. In the y-axis here, it shows us the percentage or the rate. She started from 0 to 100 here. So, yes, there is something more that we have to consider is, I mean, if you look at the bottom here, uh, there are some notes here, you can read them, but the most important part here is the source. I mean, if you want to know the source of this chart, just for the sake of avoiding plagiarism, then it's written here, and that could be important when you want to use it in your own, for example, research or term paper. Now, let's start looking at the second part of the question. I mean, after studying the graph, of course, be careful, because here sometimes the graph below. If you have two graphs, for example, be careful about the preposition here. Below means it comes, the one that comes down here. And if it's above, then maybe the graph which is given before this one here. Because sometimes it may happen that you may come across a text where there are two graphs, one on the top and the other at the bottom, and you have to make sure which one you are talking about. So the second stage is the description of the information in the chart itself here. So the best way to start with is, I mean, after studying the graph, is to start by looking at the text written here at the bottom of the graph and try to see if we can complete the description according to the trends given here. So if you remember in our previous lecture, we said that when we describe trends, most probably there are three cases. It might be upward trend, I mean it's going this way, and in that case we use verbs like increase, rise, goes up, and so on. And if it is downward trend, like the one about those with high school diplomas, I mean it goes down like this one, then we use this is called downward trend, and in that case we use verbs like went down, sorry, goes down or dropped, and so on, taking into account whether you're going to, which tense you're going to use, simple present tense, for example, or past simple tense, and why. Of course, in addition to using some other function words that you may need for completing or giving more information about the trends, like using adjectives and adverbs. as we're going to see here later on. So, sorry. Uh, let's start with the text here. The text starts by saying the line graph above shows. So this is the very beginning. I mean, it's very important to pay attention to the subject-verb agreement. The line graph above shows the change in the tendency of women between 15 to 44 years of age. I mean, those whose age ranges between 14 to 44. Maybe this piece of information is given in the introduction here. I mean, you don't have to find it out because the two charts here are just telling us about the time span here and the percentage. You see? So you don't have to worry about this one. Okay, the line graph above shows the change in the tendency of women between 15 to 44 years of age to demand higher level of education in American society between 1960 and 2011. And you have to remember that this is the last 30 or 40 years or 50 years ago. I mean, it is something in the past. I mean, all the events we're going to describe here are in the past. Therefore, you have to be very careful when you're going to use tenses describing the trends given in the chart. Okay. Between 1960 and 1990, you see in this part here, between 1960 to 1990, okay, the percentage of women receiving college degree or higher education. So here you need to stop and concentrate. Here we're talking about women receiving higher degree or more. That means you have to decide, are you going to talk about the gray chart or the black one? We talk about women receiving college degree or higher. See, some college or more. That means we are talking about the gray one here. This one, if you can see the movement of the cursor, this is the chart that represents women who have a degree college or more than that, I mean with higher education. Okay, try to complete the sentence. Between 1960 and 1990, the percentage of women receiving college degree or higher education, blah, 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 from 18% to 50%, while the percentage of women who received a high school diploma or less, blah, 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 from 82% to 50%. So yes, it's a bit long sentence, but we can break it down into two parts so that we can understand things slowly. So at the beginning here, he starts by describing the percentage of women who receive, or at least he tries to compare between those who receive a college degree or higher. In which period? In the period between 1960 to 1990. And see that something happened to this from 18% to 50%. So if you look at the y-axis here, since we are dealing with the gray graph here, I mean the one which describes the change, so the share of women with college degree or more, it starts from here, from 18, because if you look at the starting point here, it is a little bit below 20 here, because the rate span here is, I mean, between each part and the other, there is something like 20 grades here, 20, then 40, 60, 80, until 100. So the beginning here is just a little bit before 20. That means it's 18. So 18 here, because it is better if you know the correct start. So from 18 to 50, according to the sentence here, from 18 to 50. 50 is here. You see, I mean, if between 40 to 60 we have 20 degrees, then somewhere in the middle here, I mean, the midpoint here represents 10. So 10 plus 40 equal 50. So yes, in 1990 it reached 50 here. So we want to describe the change that happened from the year 1960 to 1990. And if you look at the trend here, is it an upward trend or a downward trend or stable trend? You can see the slide, or sorry, the gradual movement from 18% to 40. So in this case, I guess you need to use a verb because it's from 18% to 50%. That means if you want to use a verb which shows this trend, it should be a verb like increase or grow or rise. And someone may think about using S, like saying grows, increase, rises, and so on. But in fact, we don't need to use simple present tense here. We have to use, I mean, if we decide to use any of the verbs that are going to describe this change here, they should be in the past. Why do they have to be in the past? I mean, if you want to use increase as a verb, it should be increased. Or if you want to use grow, it should be grew, change the O into E. Or if you want to use rise, you have to use rose. Okay, we have to use these verbs or tenses simply because we are describing an event that happened in the past. As you can see, now we are in the year 2020, but we are talking about something that happened in the period between 1960 to 2011. So through the whole description you're going to use here, you have to use simple past tense. Therefore, if you want to fill in the gap given here, you have to use a verb that describes an ascending, or let's say an upward trend, either by saying increased, you can write increased here, increased, or grew, if you want to use the past tense of grow, or rose at the past tense of rise. And of course, inshallah, I will provide you with a text including the answers we are going to discuss here on a separate sheet through your Blackboard account. So you can use either increased, and of course, increase is a regular verb, therefore it ends with ed, or grew, or rose. These are two irregular verbs, and you have to be careful about this. From 18% to 50%, while. So why do you think while here is used? While or where, but, and so on, these are keywords that can be used to show contrast. You see, so if you have while or on the other hand or however, nonetheless, and so on, this could be used as cohesive dividers showing contrast. So we want to contrast to show the difference between the two trends here. While the percentage of women who received high school diploma or less, so in order to avoid confusion, concentrate on the description carefully. So now we are talking about, or we are trying to compare the first group here, I mean those with college degree or more, with those who have high school diploma or less. You see? Now that means you need to concentrate on the dark black line graph here, starting from this point here, as you can see it, from 82 here, because this one is a little bit above the line. And if you notice the trend, it is a descending one. I mean, it is a downward trend. It moves down. You see, it starts from a higher point and it moves gradually until this point here. Then after that, there is some slight change from this point in the year 1990 until, for example, 2011. Now, this is what you have to notice before finishing your description or the sentence in the description here. So now our concentration is going to be on the dark uh, line graph here. So let's go to the sentence. While, what is it, does it start from? Yes. While the percentage of women who received a high school diploma or less dash from 82% to 50%. So since the structure here is similar to the first part of the sentence, then I guess we have to follow the same format, because here we use verbs like increased, grow, rose, because we are describing an ascending or an upward trend, as we can see it here. The second part of the sentence, which is trying to show us some kind of contrast, uh, is almost the same, but it is the opposite. Sorry, it's in the opposite direction. So in that case, if you want to describe upward uh, trend, we use verb like increase, grows, rose. Uh, it is the contrary when you want to show a downward trend. I mean, you have to use the other verbs. So instead of increase, you use decrease or decline or drop. And again, you have to be careful about what kind of tenses is going to be used here, since we talk about things in the past, or we are describing past events here. Therefore, before you start using the verbs, you have to see the percentage. Start from 82% to 50%. I mean, in the same span time. I mean, in the period between 1960 to 1990. So let's check this one here. Yes, it starts from 82%, yeah, and it goes down, I mean, until 1990, which is 50, as we have seen it earlier, because the two graphs joins or intersect at this point here. And this may show you some kind of, important thing that you may consider, because we said that when you want to describe a chart, your concentration should be on figures which give or which have some statistical significance. And this is a point where if you want to give some kind of interpretation for this phenomena, you can talk about it later on. But at this level, we're going to talk about things in a very simple way. So anyway, this is a decrease. And since we have used verbs in the first gap here, then we have to do the same, and we need to use also a verb here. And the verb we're going to use is or supposed to show a downward trend. Therefore, we can use in this gap here either decreased or declined or dropped. And of course, the three verbs, I mean, all of them are possible. You can use decreased or declined or dropped. And as you can see, the three verbs uh, are regular verbs. I mean, they all end in ed, and you have to be careful about dropped when you change it from simple from its basic form drop, drop, into its simple past form. You have to double the last p, double p, then ed, because the verb drop ends with a consonant p, and of course, when you want to change this one into the past, then the last consonant should be doubled, as you have learned in your orientation here courses. So in gap 2 here, you have to use either decreased, declined, or drop. Of course, you just need one verb only. I mean, any of the three would be correct, just like in the first gap here. Okay, now let's continue. An additional 16% dash in the percentage of mothers with the college education or higher degree cause the percentage to dash up to 66% in the year 2011 as the peak. Peak means the highest point. You see? Now, you need to concentrate carefully, because sentences, when sentences are long, you need to go back and check. So here, uh, you are talking about an additional thing in the percentage of mothers with college education or higher degree. That means you have to concentrate on which line you are describing. So here we talk about mothers with higher degree. Uh, that means your concentration should be on the gray box here. So from 16%, sorry, an additional of 16%, 16% uh, in the percentage of mothers with college education or higher degree caused the percentage to dash up to 66% in the year 2011. That means we need to concentrate what was happening here. So there is something that starts from the year 1950 until 2011. So again here, this is an upward movement, as you can see it here. I mean, there is some kind of increase, you see, because he talks about something like 66 here. Because if you look at this point here, it's a little bit above the line here. So it's 66. That means we are still talking about an increase. And here, since this is an upward trend, just concentrate. Do we need to use a verb or a noun or an adjective or an adverb? Now, you can decide on this through the context itself. So read the sentence again. An additional 16% dash in the percentage. So I think here, definitely you need to use a noun. So in that case, you can use the word increase as a noun or rise, because you have to be very careful about words that have some derivations. And as we said, the word increase can be used as a verb or as a noun. And rise itself can be used as a verb or a noun, just like drop and so on. So here, you need to use a noun because the adjective here, an additional 16%, you have learned in grammar that adjectives are always used to describe nouns. And if there is an adjective here, then definitely this adjective should modify or describe a noun. So in that case, you can use increase or rise. Remember, without ed, because it's going to be used as a verb. So we have to say there is an additional 16% increase or rise because it goes up, as you can see it here. You see, up to 66 here. In the percentage of mothers with college education or higher degrees, cause the percentage to dash up to 66% in the year 2011. Now, the part up here can be used as a clue, because since we talk about a rate moving from 16% to this percent here, that means we are still describing an upward trend. And if you remember that this is a preposition, and this preposition can be used as a part of prepositional verbs like climb, up, and what else? You can't say, for example, increase up, and you can't say, for example, grow up or rose up. So the only thing that we use with up here is climb up. So I think you have to use climb up. And of course, although we are describing an event in the past, you can't say climbed. You have to say climb up, simply because after to, you have to use the basic form of the verb. So to the percentage cause the percentage to climb up. So you have to write climb here. And the clue used here is the word up here. So climb up to 66% in the year 2011 as the peak. The peak means the highest point, as you can see it here. So this is the highest point of the change that took place in the period between 1960 to 2011. So this is why we have to use climb up in this gap here. Okay, now let's continue. The sentence is still incomplete. Okay, climb up to 66% in 2011 as the peak. While, so remember, again, we're going to see or to contrast this percentage with uh, the one that I mean the percentage of mothers with higher school diploma or less. So now this time we want to compare this downward trend, sorry, upward trend of mothers with degree, sorry, with college degree or her, with those of uh, high school diploma or less in the same period. I mean, after starting, I mean, from this point where they cross each other here. So let's read the remaining part. While the percentage of mothers with higher school diploma or less dashed to 34%. Now, I just want you to think about any clue that can help you to decide whether you need to use a verb or a noun or an adjective or whatever. So, what do you think that you can use before, I mean, in the gap here, before to? Blah, 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 to 34%. I mean, you want, it's just like chinga, chang, changa. I mean, someone did something, for example, somewhere else or in order to do so and so. So from the context here, definitely, I think you need to use a verb here because you want to see what happened, 34%. Now, let's try to see where is this 34%. Okay, 34% is here. I mean, in the same period. So that means if you want to describe what was being provided here, then it is something going down. So it is a decrease or a drop. But are we going to use a verb, a noun, or an adjective? This is what we can decide from the context here. So let's have a look at the context. While the percentage of mothers with higher school diploma or less dash to 34%. So since it goes down here and you have to, then I guess we need to use a verb here. So we can say decreased or dropped, or there's another one that we forgot to use before, fell. I mean, fell is the past tense of the verb to fall. So please be careful with spelling here. When you write fell, it should be F-E-L-L because we have some other homophones like fail, F-A-I-L, or other similar verbs or nouns like feel and so on. So here it's fell, F-E-L-L. I mean, at the past form of fall. So your answer could include any of these two verbs. I mean, it could be decreased, sorry, any of these three verbs. It could be decreased or dropped with ed or fell, F-A-L-L. So in this way, we use or we fill in the gaps given here by describing the change in the in the chart here by concentrating on each line graph by itself, where you can show some kind of contrast, concentrating on describing the trend, whether it's upward trend or downward trend, in a very simple way. So this is the first practice where we can put things we have learned in our previous lecture on practical way. So inshallah, you will get the answers to all these activities on a separate Word file where you can go over them once again. Okay, now let's move to another graph this time. And again, as I have told you, before you start dealing with the graph, you have to understand the graph or study it. Because if you look at the instructions here, it always starts with study. You see, study the graph below and answer the questions given. So this time, We're going to have just one graph, one line graph, still a line graph. And let's start by trying to look at the title of the graph itself. It is something about the percentage of candidates applying for jobs in oil companies. Straightforward. And as you can see, our graph here is trying to link between information given in the two axis. In the y-axis here, we have the years, as you can see, starting from 1994 to the year 2000. And here we have the percentage, starting from 0 to 90%. So this one is straightforward, but this time you have to understand the chart and try to find out answers to the questions given here. So the best way to deal with the chart is through looking at the question first of all. So let's start by looking at the first question here. During which period was there a plateau in the percentage of applicants? So you need to understand this question carefully. And there is a key word here. I mean, first of all, during which period, that means there is a set of periods. I mean, we have, for example, this period where there is an increase in the period between 1994, it's one change. You can consider it as one period, or you can have it as two set of separate periods from 1994 to 1950, then from 1995 to 19 as one period, or two separate periods, because it describes an upward trend here. And this could be another period because here the percentage went down, you see, or dropped. Then this is another period where it increased again. And then here this is another period where it stayed at the same level, or it leveled off, or there is what we call it a plateau here. Then this is the third period where it went down. So the graph here shows some kind of fluctuation or change in the movement or in the percentage of candidates applying for jobs in oil companies. And of course, this could be attributed to certain justifications, which you might not be need to provide here. So different periods. And when you say which, that means we have to choose one of these. Now, what's the clue given here? The clue is this word here. During which period was there a plateau? You see, plateau in the percentage of applicants. And of course, when we say plateau, we mean that when the figures given or the events being described stayed at the same level, or when they remain steadily. You see, so if you look at the line graph here in the period between 1998 to 1999, you can feel that it stays at the same level. I mean, there isn't any kind of upward trend or downward trend. It remained at the same level. And here we say it's plateau here. So in that case, your answer should be, since we are asking about the period, you can say, if you want to give a short answer, you can say between 1998 and 1999. Because you see, if you draw a line, then you find that this one here matches 1998, and this part here matches 1999. So your answer briefly could be between 1998 to 1999 here, because the question is about the period. You see, the question is about the period, and the periods are represented by the x-axis here. So your concentration should be on this part here. Okay, is that clear? Okay, now let's move to the second question, and after that we can look at the graph. The second question here says, it's very similar. During which year, remember this time your concentration is on the year rather than the whole period, did the lowest number of applicants apply for jobs? So you have to concentrate on the keywords here. The keyword here is, or the key phrase is, the lowest number. So we need to know the lowest number of applicants in which year. Now, definitely, since the graph starts uh, from 30%, goes up to 50, 60, 50, 80%, then it goes down. I think this is very straightforward. The lowest means the least number. So here, this is the lowest here is 30%. Now, he's not asking about the percentage. He or she wants us to find in which year. So when you go down, you will find that this one corresponds to the year 1994. Therefore, your answer should be in 1994. I mean, in the year 1994. And here, of course, you have to be careful about the preposition in, because when you give answers, uh, we always check your grammar. So don't say on or by or any other preposition. You have to use in 1994. So in 1994, this is your answer here, 1994. Now, the third question is this one here. What was the rate of increase in percentage increase from 1997 to 1998? Here, there are two things that you have to concentrate on. The first part is what was the rate? Rate here means, it's another word, I mean, for the percentage. You see? Another word for the percentage. You see? What was the rate of increase in percentage increase from 1997 to 1998? So first of all, you need to concentrate on the period from 1997 to 1998. 1997, this year, 1997 to 1998. So in 1997, it is 50%. And we want to know the rate in between the period 1997 to 1998, which is 80. So when you divide it, when you subtract 80 from 50, you will find that the increase of the percentage here, I mean, the rate of the percentage, is what is, I mean, the difference between the year 1997 to 1998, which is 80 minus 50, which is 30%. Therefore, your answer for question 3 should be 30%. 30%. You have to write it in a figure, 30. And for percent, you don't need to use the word percent. No, just use a symbol. You see, 30%. As you are going to see in the answer, we're going to provide you with at the end of this presentation. You see, the answer is 30%. And you have to know why it's 30, because in 1997, it's here, 50, and it increased to 80. And the difference between 50 and 80, or 80 and 50, is just by subtracting the highest from the lowest, where you will get it as 30%. So this is question 3. Let's move to question 4. Indicate, I mean, point out, indicate the two periods when there was a drop. This is a keyword here. There's a drop in the number of candidates applying for jobs. So he told us that we have to find out, or to point, two periods where there was a drop in the number of candidates. Excuse me. So while I'm taking a sip of water, I just wanted to look at the graph and see which periods where there was a drop. Just take a look, please. Take a second or two. Okay. Now, two periods where there was a drop. A drop means you have to think about a downward trend rather than an upward trend. So if you look at this part here, the year 2060, from 60 to 50, here it goes down. I mean, there's a drop here, this one period. And if you look at this is the period between 1996 to 1997. Now, you don't have to bother yourself about the increase, or when there is period where it remains steady. No, you just concentrate on the period where there is or there was a drop. So this is the first period here. I mean, in the period between 1996 to 1997. And again here, when you look at the direction of the line graph here, it went down. And if you want to use a noun, then you can say also drop. I mean, there is another drop in the period between 1999 to the year 2000. So in that case, if you want to give your answer to question 4, read it again. Indicate means you have to mention it. The 2 periods when there was a drop in the number of candidates applying for jobs. So your answer could be between 1996 and 1997. This is the first period. 1996 and 1997. This is the first period. And you have to write and between 1999 and 2000, or the year 2000 here. And this is your answer. You have to mention 2 periods. This is the first period from 1996 to 1997, and the second period is this decrease here from 1999 to the year 2000. So I think it's clear. Now let's move to the last question here. Write an introductory sentence that describes the line graph. Write an introductory sentence that describes the line graph. And this one will take us right away to what we have mentioned in our previous lecture. We said that somewhere in the middle of our lecture, we said that the most important thing that you could also pay attention to in describing charts, whether it's a line graph or a pie graph or a table or whatever, is to have an introductory sentence. I mean, before we start talking about the figures, which, for example, show some statistical significance in your graph, you need to think about a suitable introductory sentence. And we give a formula there. You see, remember, we give a formula there in which we said you have to describe the chart itself. Start by describing the chart itself. Is it, for example, a bar graph or a line graph or a table or a chart, whatever? You have to start by saying this. Then in our case here, this would be a line graph, of course. It's not a pie chart, it's not a bar graph or histogram, or it's not a diagram. So let's say this line graph. Then as part of the formula, we said you have to use a verb like shows, displays, or illustrates. And if we were in a real classroom situation, I would have asked you this question. Why do you think we use verbs, or we have to use a verb with S? I mean, shows, displays, or illustrates. Simply, you have to think about the subject-verb agreement. I mean, when you say this line graph shows, or describes, or illustrates, or displays what? That then you have to go to the title. Displays the percentage of candidates applying for jobs in oil companies. I mean, here, after using the verb, you have to use the wordings, I mean, the same wordings given in the title itself here. The title is usually given at the top. Now let's come back to the question. Why do you think we use, I mean, immediately after starting with this line graph, for example, this shows or describes or displays or illustrates the percentage of candidates until the end of the year. So why do you think we add S? Simply because we talk about one line graph. And since this is singular, you have to think about subject-verb agreement. Since there is just one line graph, then you have to remember to add S to the verb you are going to use here. So it should be shows or displays or illustrates the percentage of candidates, blah, 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 blah. And this is very important. It means be careful about subject-verb agreement, because when we check your work, we're going to deduct some marks in case, for example, you have some language problems as far as grammar is concerned. And subject-verb agreement is a grammatical issue. You see? Now, you start by saying this chart or this line graph. I mean, you have to describe it. It's a line graph. It's not a table. This line graph, let's say, use, for example, the verb shows, or displays, or illustrates the percentage. You need to add the definite article that here. The percentage of candidates applying for jobs in oil companies. Now, you have to tell us the period. I mean, you have to think about the relationship between the two axes here. I mean, the x-axis and the y-axis. Since the x-axis here is for the period, and you have to start by indicating the beginning and the end of the period here. So you could continue saying this line graph shows the percentage of candidates applying for jobs in oil companies over, for example, a 7-year period. A 7-year period. This is one period, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or if you concentrate on it, it is the period between 1994 to 2000. Of course, 94 1 year, 95 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you could use, I mean, you can describe the period as, I mean, immediately after the last word here. You could say over a 7-year period, and if you want to use 7 year, after 7 you have to use a hyphen. I mean, between 7 and year you have to use a hyphen. And of course, if you remember, we mentioned earlier that if you want to write any figure or any number between 1 to 9 or 10, you have to use words rather than figures. So don't write 7 as a figure, no, write it as a word. 7, then hyphen, then after that period. A 7-year period, or you could say between 1994 to and the year 2000. This is easier. So in that case, if you want to answer the question, it reads like this. You could write something like this. You could say, this line graph shows or displays or illustrates, you just need to use one of them, the percentage of candidates applying for jobs in oil companies over a 7-year period, if you want to stop it here. Or if you don't want it, you can say applying for jobs in oil companies between 1994 and the year 2000. And as I promise you, inshallah, I'll give you all these answers in written form on a separate text or document. So is that clear? Of course, I wish if I could get your answers, but since this is one-way presentation, there is no way to get your feedback. Now, the last part here is a continuation for the same practice, but this time it is slightly different because we're going to use different function words. I mean, if you concentrate on the text given here, the text has some gaps that has to be filled here, and these gaps should describe the line graph here. You see, you can see the trends going, where there is increase, decrease, and you need to show in what way the changes took place here. So in order to understand, what you have to do here is you just need to concentrate on the instruction given here. So the instruction says here, the line graph shows Paris Metro station passengers, the number of passengers in Paris Metro. Study the graph below and complete the description with the words or phrases from the table below. Do you have words? Yes, we have a table here. And this time, the text is, I mean, the task is going to be what is the list of tables? We don't have it here. Maybe I'll provide it I'll give you this in the answer because it's not given here. So we can think about it. We can deduct it from the text itself. You see. So you have the chart here, and as you can see, in the x-axis you have time, starting from 6 to 7 until 22, 24-hour system, and here you have the number of passengers. You see, for example, 6 o'clock, there is only about 100 passengers, and the peak time is here at period 8. I think it's, because of its rush hour for employees going to work, then it goes down between 9 o'clock to 11, and you can see the description here. So we are going to concentrate on what we need to use in the gaps itself here. So in this case, you can start right away by looking at the text itself here. So let's look at the first sentence here. The number of passengers increased dash in the morning, reaching a peak of 400 at 8 a.m. So at 8 a.m. and says dash reaching the peak. So at 8 a.m. you want to see from 6 to 8. We want to describe the change here. I mean, yes, it's an increase, but we want to see in what way does this happen. And if you remember, we said that when you want to describe a noun like increase, then you have to think about a suitable word that modifies this noun here. So increase as a noun could be modified by an adjective rather than a verb. You see? So here, are you going to describe a noun or a verb? You can decide on whether you're going to use an adverb or an adjective according to the context here. So let's try to look at the context again. The number of passengers increased. So this is a verb here. And since it's a verb, you have to think about using an adverb, because if you want to use, if you want to describe an action which is always expressed by a verb, then in that case we have to use an adverb. So the adverb here, if you look at the change, so it doesn't increase, for example, slightly or gradually or sharply. You see, from let's say 100 to 40, and if you can see the changes here, it goes on almost similar spans. I mean, it jumps from one point to another almost on. You see here, from 100 to 20, then from 200 to 30, then from 30 to 400. So in that case, I think we can say slightly. You see, it increased slightly in the morning. Slightly means gradually, and we use slightly as an adverb simply because we are describing a verb which is used to describe the action of increase here. So increased slightly. I mean, you have to add ly to the adjective slight in order to change it into an adverb. So increased slightly in the morning, reaching a peak of 400 at 8 a.m. After the morning peak, the number dash steadily to 300 at 9. So let's look at 9. What happened at 9? This is 9. And also from 400 to 300 to, you see, in a permanent way. So dash steadily. What are we going to use here? I mean, this is a downward movement. So I think we need a verb here. And if you want to show what happened here, then this is a decrease. You see? But you're not going to use the word at decrease, because here you need to use a verb. Therefore, you have to say decreased steadily. You see, decreased steadily to 300 here. Decrease steadily, because if you look at the line, it wanes without fluctuation. So this is why we use steadily as an adverb here. So decrease steadily to 300 at 9, and fewer than 200 at 10 a.m. Yes, 10 a.m. fewer than 200. Yes, because this one should be lower than the line here. You see, this is why we use uh, this graph here. Now let's continue. The number dash just below 300 between 12 noon and 2 p.m. So 12 noon to 2 p.m. here. So between 12 to 2. So what kind of trend here? Is it an upward trend or a downward trend? So look at it again, please. The number that's just below. I mean, it remained below this 300. So 300 is here. So look at the period 300. That means it remained at the same level. You see, between 2 o'clock, so 12 to 3. Sorry, 2 p.m. here. 2 p.m. is 14 here. So if it remained at the same level here, what word that can be used to describe this change here? Dash just below. So I think we need the verb here. You can either use remained stable or leveled off. Just one of these two phrases. So you could say remained stable, or leveled off. Be careful about the preposition off, or double F. You see, of course, when you find the answers, and you have to pay attention to issues of spelling. So leveled off, OFF, or remained stable, because it says at the same point here. So let's continue. So leveled off or remained stable. Stable means without change. Now let's continue. In the afternoon, there was a decline in the number of citizens using the station to just 80% at 4 p.m. Okay, we don't have to bother about showing that. The evening brought a huge increase from 2000 at 5 p.m. to almost 400 at 6 p.m. Okay, let's continue. The number of passengers decreased slightly after 6 p.m. but dash to 120 by 8 p.m. Now, if you remember, in one of the examples we have seen earlier in one of the previous charts, we said that 2 here can be used as a clue. I mean, once you find 2, then simply that means before this one, most probably you may need to use a verb. You see, and in this context here, your concentration is in the period after 6 p.m. Until, for example, 8 p.m. So let's see what kind of trend. 6 p.m. Of course, this is p.m. here. 6 p.m. 6 p.m. started from 18 here. 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. That means 8 is 12 plus, sorry, 20 minus 12, which is here. So here, what kind of trend is this one? Is it an upward trend or a downward trend? So definitely, as you can see, it goes from, sorry, it went from the top and coming back to the lower part here. So it is some kind of drop or decrease if you want to use it here. So in that case, since you're going to describe a downward trend, you may need to use a word, and sorry, a phrase, and this phrase should be made up of 2 words. That means one of them should modify the other. I mean, the words that is going to be used in this gap here, gap number 5, should modify or describe the one which is used in gap number 4. And in that case, you need to use either an adjective. If it's an adjective, then the adjective should modify or describe the noun that follows. Or if you're going to use an adverb, then the adverb should be described by should modify a verb which is used earlier or before it. And we said in this context here, because we have to here, then to here tell us that here we need to use a verb. I mean, in one of these two gaps. And if there is a verb here, this verb should be followed by an adverb to tell us to what degree is the change that's being described here. Therefore, since it is a downward movement here, then definitely we can use the verb drop. So we say, but dropped. And of course, you have to be careful about the tense we are going to use here. So here I have to say dropped, double P, dropped. Then how? We want to show in what way did it drop. Therefore, you can use an adverb that describes the situation. So you see, from let's say 400 to an abrupt or to just 100 in a very short period of time between let's say 6 to 8 in just in 2 hours, then in that case you can see that since this is represent an acute angle, as you can see it here, an acute angle, then definitely we use sharply. So we can say but dropped sharply to 120 by 8 p.m. After small rise at 9 p.m., the number tailed off to 120 at 10 p.m. So this is a very nice and sophisticated language used to describe these charts here. And of course, since you are dealing with academic text, you should be able to deal with things in this way. I mean, once you manage to describe these kind of changes with such a language using different function words to describe change, then this shows that you are mastering what you are describing. And this is what you should be able to do, I mean, as part of the requirements for passing this course here. Because now you are at a level where you should be able to deal with charts from different disciplines, and you should be able to describe them accurately as we have mentioned here. And this is why or how we can utilize language in other course disciplines you are studying. Okay, so now shall we move to the next part, the last part? Okay, the last part here is a bit more sophisticated exercise or practice. And let's start by reading the instructions here. It says, read the reports on the sales results. See, sales results of different products and match each one to the correct graph. So the reports are here, short reports here. We have 5 reports. This is the first one. Number 1, this is the second one, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have to read each report and try to match it with the suitable or the correct graph here. So again, some of the wordings in the graph itself can be used as a clue to show which graph is being described. Is it graph A? You see, you have to concentrate on the 2 axes here. There is X and Y axis in all cases, where this one indicates the period or time, and this one, for example, the quantity or the percentage of increase, whatever. So you see this one, increase, decrease. This one start by high level, went down or fluctuated down and up, then it decreased. And here, for example, in C, there is some kind of gradual movement. Then there is some kind of gradual increase, and here we have a gradual decrease, and here it increased, decreased, then it reached its highest point here at 800 in the year 2018, and here it starts at 1000 and reach its peak at in the year 2000 at 2000, then it decreased gradually here. So at the beginning, you just need to have a general look at the graphs. Then through the wordings used in each report, this can help you to decide which graph is being described. So without spending a lot of time in talking about details, we will just concentrate on uh, things that can be used as clues and go directly to see the report they are describing here. So let's look at the first report here. It says cosmetic sales of feline products went up from $1,000 to $2,000 per day in the year 2000. Then it rose again in the year 2005 to peak at 3,000 per day. After that, they fell gradually to 1,500 or 1,500 in the year 2018. So you need to concentrate on the figures given here. For example, went up from 1,000 to 2,000. Went up, that means it's increased. Started from 1,000 to 2,000. Went up. This one goes here, went up, and this one also went up, went up, went up, all of them. But you need to concentrate on another clue that can give you more details. For example, then it rose again in 2005. 2005 rose again, okay, to peak at 3,000. To peak means to reach the highest point. 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, 3,000. Yes, to peak here. If you look, this to peak means to reach the highest point here, to peak at 3,000. Okay, then what happens after that? In the year 2000, is it in the year 2005? Yes, 2005. Yes, you're right. And after that, they fell gradually to 1,500 in the year 2018. Fell gradually. Yes, fell, yes, gradually in the year, yes, exactly. So according to the clues you have mentioned or you have seen in report one, definitely we are describing char C. So number one goes with C here. I mean, if you want to give an answer, you can simply write C or match it with C here. Okay. Now let's look at the second report here. Gold sales had a dismal start in 1995. It gradually rose to $500 a week in 2005. Then it increased dramatically. I mean, this is a very good clue. Increased dramatically and peaked. Peak means reach the highest level at $2,000 per carat in 2010 before failing to almost less than 500 per carat in the year 2018. You see, falling. So this one is similar to what we have mentioned here, but you need to find a clue. Of course, we have to exclude C since we have already chosen it. Our concentration should be on the other four left. And if you look at the last part of the report here, says then it increased dramatically and peaked at 2,000 per carat in the year 2018. So let's see a peak in the year 2010. In the year 2010, here this is not a peak. 2010, this is not a peak. Yes, 2010, this is a peak here. You see, this is a peak here. I mean, the highest point. So most probably, our answer is going to be A. I mean, this one, the first one here, A. Let's double check and see. Gold sales and this had a dismal start in 1995. I mean, small means they start at the very level, sorry, at the very level, low level. You see. Then what happened? It gradually rose up to $500 gradually. Yes, as you can see, gradually. You see, from 0 to 500 in the year 2005. Then it reached its peak here at 2010. So definitely our choice for this report is graph A here. So the answer to report 2 is A. You see, you are going to write A here. Okay, let's move to the third one. In 1995, the sale of used books was 100,000 per week or per week. In the year 2000, it declined to less than 500. So you can use this as a clue at the beginning. It declined means it went down. So let's look at the year 2000 where the graph goes down. In the year 2000, of course, now we can exclude C and A, and we have to concentrate on the three here. So we said in the year 2000, it went down. Year 2000, here this one is increased. The period between 2000 and what? In the year 2000, it declined to less than 500. So let's see. Year 2000, yeah, less than 500. No, not this one. 2000, this is 300. Not this one. The year 2000, less than 5. Yes, most probably this one here. So in the year 2000 here, it decreased. It went down to less than 500. Yes, 500 and less than 500. Therefore, our answer definitely is going to be B here. You see, I mean, even without completing the remaining the description of the remaining description of the chart. So say in the year 2000, it declined to less than 500 per week. The sales increased again after a long slump in the year 2015 and peaked at 2000 per week in 2011. If you want to double check and see, yes, you see, you can find that after the increase here, you can see what has been mentioned in the remaining part of the report is correct. So in that case, you have to choose B. You see? Now, we have already chosen C, B, and A. Sorry, C, A, and B. And now we have the last two. So let's look at report 4. Excuse me. Okay. Surgical equipment, I mean equipment used for surgery work. Surgical equipment sales rose up gradually from $1,000 per week to peak at $2,000 per week in the year 2000, before gradually falling down to less than $1,500 per week in the year 2018. So now, just to use some techniques that can help you in dealing with such graphics. If you have, for example, 5 diagrams or 5 charts being presented here, just exclude those parts which you have already chosen as correct answers and concentrate on the remaining parts. So I think we have already chosen A and B and C. Now we are remain with D and E, these two left here. So let's look at it again and let's try to find a clue that can help us to decide whether it's going to be, for example, D or E here. So let's read it once again. Surgical equipment sales rose up gradually from 1,000 per week per week to peak at 2,000 per week in the year 2000, before gradually falling down. So the last trend is falling down. It's peaked, I mean, it went to the peak, the highest point, then it went down. You see, most probably it seems to be E here because it reached the peak here in the year 2000, then it fell gradually because here after the peak there is nothing. I mean, there is no any kind of trend here. Therefore, if you just double check it again, And you read once again, surgical equipment sales rose up gradually from 1,000 per week to peak at 2,000 per week in the year 2000. In the year 2000, yes, it peaked. Then after that, what happened? Before gradually falling down to less than 1,500 per week in the year. Yes, less than 1,500. So definitely, our choice for this report is graph E. So 4 goes with E here. And of course, automatically, the last one remained should, report 5 should match D. But let's just try to find a justification. Why do we have to choose D in case it is, if in case you come across this report at the beginning? Let's read the report. Washing machine sales started at less than 100%. Started at less than 100. Less than one, this is 100 here, and it started at the beginning. Very good clue. Less than 100. So you can see it here, and this can be a very simple clue from the very beginning. And of course, you can find other justifications why you have to choose this one here. Okay. In the year 1995, and gradually rose to $500 per day in the year 2005. Then it saw a gradual fall to $100 per day in the year 2015 before dramatically rising again. Let's see in which year, to peak at 800 per day in the year 2018. To peak means to reach the highest point. You see, so definitely it is D here. Yes, our choice is D. So just to recap, or to give you a summary for the last exercise here, we said that number 1 matches C, as we have written it here. Report 2 goes with A, and report 3 goes with B, and report 4 goes with E, and the last one, report 5, goes with D. And inshallah, I'll provide you with the answers to all these activities on a separate file that you may find in Blackboard. Sorry, our lecture today is very long, simply because in case to understand the details being given here, we need to elaborate on things step by step. So this is actually what you need to deal with when you want to deal with visual information, particularly when you want to concentrate on using certain or describing certain charts, whether it's a line graph or pie chart or table or whatever. So I'll send you the answers to these activities so that you can practice them by doing it once or going over it once again, and you can check your answers on the answer module, or in the module answer that you will get on a separate file. Until then, I wish you all the best. Thank you.